The early life of Elizabeth Short, 1924 to 1940. Baby bottle birth and family background. Elizabeth Short was born on July 29, 1924, in Hyde Park, a neighborhood in Boston, Massachusetts, USA. She was the third of 5 daughters born to Cleo A. Short and Phoebe May Sawyer Short. Her sisters were Virginia, Dorothea, Eleanora, and Muriel. Elizabeth's father, Cleo, was an industrious man. In the 1920s, he built miniature golf courses, a booming business before the Great Depression. The Shorts were middle class and lived comfortably in Medford, Massachusetts, a quiet suburb of Boston. But when the Great Depression struck in 1929, everything changed. The economy collapsed, people lost jobs, and Cleo's business failed. In 1930, his car was found abandoned near a bridge, and police believed he had committed suicide. Phoebe was left alone to raise 5 daughters. She worked as a bookkeeper and cashier, struggling to feed the family during the harshest years of the Depression. The loss of their father left a permanent scar, especially on young Elizabeth, who was just 6 at the time. Cherry blossom growing up without a father. Phoebe was a strict but caring mother, devoted to her daughters. The Short girls learned early how to survive on little. Elizabeth, however, stood out. She was described as shy, dreamy, and captivated by movies. Hollywood films of the 1930s, with stars like Jean Harlow and Rita Hayworth, fascinated her. Friends later recalled how she would spend hours staring into mirrors, imagining herself as a screen actress. She was also known for her beauty. Pale skin, jet black hair, deep blue eyes, and a love for elegant fashion, even when she couldn't afford much. Health struggles and Florida winters. Elizabeth suffered from severe asthma and chronic bronchitis as a child. Her doctors advised her mother that the cold New England winters were dangerous for her lungs. To help her health, Phoebe sent Elizabeth to Miami, Florida, during several winters to stay with family friends. This is where she first developed her love for warm weather, palm trees, and adventure. All symbols of the freedom she longed for. School education and teenage years. Elizabeth attended Medford High School, but she struggled academically and was more interested in movies, makeup, and social life than in schoolwork. She left school at age 16 in the early 1940s without graduating. Despite her limited education, Elizabeth was intelligent and street-smart. She wrote letters, kept journals, and loved reading fan magazines about film stars. Her biggest dream? To leave Massachusetts and live somewhere sunny, preferably California. Broken heart, the shocking return of her father. In 1942, 12 years after his supposed death, Elizabeth's father, Cleo Short, suddenly reappeared, alive. He wrote to Phoebe, explaining that he had faked his suicide to escape his financial troubles. Elizabeth, now 18, decided to reconnect with him. She moved to Vallejo, California, to live with her father and start a new life. But things didn't go as planned. She hoped he would help her build a future, perhaps even support her acting dream, but they clashed constantly. He complained about her spending habits and lifestyle. Within months, Elizabeth moved out, determined to survive on her own. This was the beginning of her California journey. A young woman chasing fame in a city full of beauty, danger, and secrets. Life in Los Angeles, dreams, relationships, and the road to darkness, 1943 to 1946. Palm tree arrival in California. In 1943, Elizabeth Short was 18 years old, young, beautiful, and full of hope. After leaving her father's home in Vallejo, she drifted through Santa Barbara, Los Angeles, and later Long Beach, searching for independence and opportunity. She worked as a waitress, sometimes in cafes near Hollywood Boulevard, where aspiring actors and musicians gathered. She rented small rooms, lived with girlfriends, and occasionally dated men who could help her financially. But her dream was always the same: white medium star to become a Hollywood actress. Woman dancing style and personality. Elizabeth stood out everywhere she went. She dressed elegantly, always in black clothes, with curled dark hair, red lipstick, and a calm, confident demeanor. People described her as mysterious yet sweet, a mix of innocence and allure. She was soft-spoken, polite, and rarely angry. Though friends said she sometimes exaggerated stories about her career or love life, perhaps to feel closer to the stardom she desired. Her beauty attracted attention wherever she went. Men admired her, women envied her. She became known in certain Los Angeles circles as the Black Dahlia, inspired by the 1946 film The Blue Dahlia, and her preference for black outfits and the dahlia flower she often wore in her hair. World War II years. During World War II, Elizabeth dated several servicemen. She worked briefly at Camp Cook, now Vandenberg Air Force Base, and socialized with soldiers who adored her. She was kind, wrote letters to men overseas, and had a reputation as a romantic dreamer. Someone who loved the idea of love more than love itself. In 1943, she was arrested for underage drinking in Santa Barbara, her only recorded crime. The police officer who booked her described her as calm, polite, and stunningly beautiful. She was released into her mother's care, but soon after, she returned to California.
Love and loss. One of the most emotional parts of Elizabeth's story is her romantic life. She was deeply in love with Lieutenant Matthew Michael Gordon Jr., an Army Air Force officer she met in Florida in 1945. He proposed to her in a letter while serving in India, and Elizabeth wrote to friends saying she was engaged and planned to marry him when he returned. But tragedy struck. Matthew's plane crashed during his final mission in August 1945, just days before the war ended. Elizabeth was devastated. Friends later said she wore black for weeks and spoke of him as her one true love. Broken heart, the Hollywood struggle. After the war, Elizabeth returned to Los Angeles in mid-1946. Hollywood was booming, but it was also ruthless. Thousands of young women came chasing fame. Few succeeded. Elizabeth moved constantly, staying with friends, acquaintances, or boyfriends. She worked occasionally as a waitress or movie usher, but most of her income came from men who admired her beauty and helped her financially. She wasn't a sex worker, despite later rumors. She was more of a romantic drifter, surviving on charm and promises of acting breaks that never came. Still, she was determined. In her letters, she wrote about her goals. Someday, I'll be somebody. But Hollywood could be cruel to dreamers. Detective her social circle. Elizabeth became part of Los Angeles's post-war nightlife. Clubs, restaurants, and bars where actors, servicemen, and businessmen mixed. She met people quickly but trusted too easily. She had no stable home, no family nearby, and very little money. Many men were drawn to her, not only for her looks, but her gentle manner. She often spoke about her dream of a simple, romantic life. To some, she seemed naive, to others, a mystery. Jobs and lifestyle. She took various small jobs, mostly as a waitress or hostess. Some nights, she couldn't afford a room, relying on friends to share space. She wrote many letters to her mother, saying everything was fine, but in truth, she was struggling to find stability. She often stayed in downtown hotels, Hollywood boarding houses, or friends' apartments, especially around Hollywood Boulevard and Los Angeles's Bunker Hill area. Rose the beginning of the end. In late 1946, Elizabeth was frequently seen around the Biltmore Hotel, the Crown Grill Bar, and the Florentine Gardens Club. Witnesses described her as calm, polite, and always well-dressed. She told people she was waiting to meet someone who promised her an acting opportunity. This was one of the last times she was seen alive. By January 1947, Elizabeth had vanished. No one reported her missing at first. People thought she had gone to San Diego or moved in with a new boyfriend. Then, just days later, Los Angeles would be shaken forever. Transition to the next chapter. The dreamer from Massachusetts, who came to California chasing stardom, would soon become the center of one of the most brutal and enduring mysteries in American history. Elizabeth's short story was about to turn from Hollywood fantasy into a true horror story. Drop of Blood Part 3, The Murder, Discovery, Crime Scene, and Media Frenzy, 1947. Sunrise the morning that shattered Los Angeles. It was a chilly morning on January 15, 1947. Los Angeles was quiet. The war was over, and the city was returning to normal life. At about 10 a.m., A woman named Betty Berzinger, a local housewife, was pushing her baby stroller along South Norton Avenue in the Limert Park area, a quiet, new suburban neighborhood south of downtown LA. As she walked past a vacant lot, something caught her eye. She saw what she thought was a mannequin, lying in the grass, pale, motionless, and cut in half. But as she drew closer, her heart froze. It wasn't a mannequin. It was the body of a young woman, brutally murdered and mutilated. Man detective the crime scene that stunned detectives. Police arrived within minutes. What they saw would haunt them forever. The body was cut cleanly in two at the waist, surgically, with precision. There was no blood at the scene, indicating she had been killed elsewhere and then placed there. Her skin was white and bloodless, as if she'd been drained. The body had been carefully posed, her arms above her head, legs spread apart, and a grotesque Glasgow smile carved from each corner of her mouth toward her ears. The killer had washed her body, making it eerily clean, and arranged it deliberately, like a disturbing display. Nearby, detectives found a sack of cement with traces of watery blood, likely used to transport the body. It was one of the most shocking crime scenes in Los Angeles history. Puzzle piece identification, the mystery woman. At first, no one knew who she was. There were no fingerprints, no purse, no identification. Detectives sent her fingerprints to the FBI using a primitive fax system, and within hours, a match came back. The victim was Elizabeth Short, age 22, originally from Massachusetts. The same Elizabeth who dreamed of Hollywood fame, now found brutally murdered in its shadows. Camera with flashed the birth of the Black Dahlia. The press went wild. Within a day, newspapers like the Los Angeles Examiner and Los Angeles Times splashed her face across front pages. They gave her a nickname that would live forever, the Black Dahlia. It was a blend of her dark beauty and a popular movie at the time, The Blue Dahlia, 1946. The name stuck, and the story exploded nationwide. Newspaper The Media Circus. Reporters flooded the LAPD headquarters. Every headline screamed horror and mystery. Hollywood's glamorous image was shattered by this unspeakable crime. The Examiner even contacted Elizabeth's mother, Phoebe Short, in Massachusetts, pretending that her daughter had won a beauty contest just to get personal details about her life. Only afterward did they tell her the truth. Elizabeth had been murdered. It was one of the most heartless media manipulations in American crime history. Forensics and clues. The autopsy revealed chilling details. Elizabeth had been dead for about 10 hours before being found. She had been tortured for hours before death. There were signs of sexual assault. Her mouth was cut into a twisted smile after she died. Her body had been drained of blood and washed clean with gasoline or water. The cut at her waist was made with surgical precision, leading detectives to believe the killer had medical training, possibly a doctor or someone skilled with surgical tools. Detectives theorized that the killer wanted to display his work to shock the public. The taunting letters. Days after the murder, the Los Angeles Examiner received an envelope. Inside was Elizabeth Short's birth certificate, social security card, photographs, and an address book with several pages missing. The envelope was neatly labeled, "The Black Dahlia's belongings." The sender's handwriting was careful and deliberate, but all identifying marks had been wiped off with gasoline. Later, more letters arrived, some mocking police, others claiming to be from the killer. Each one added to the horror and confusion, but none led to a real suspect. Busts in silhouette the suspects. Police interrogated more than 150 people, including boyfriends, acquaintances, and Hollywood insiders. Among them were Mark Hansen, the nightclub owner who had employed Elizabeth and let her stay at his home. Red Manley, a traveling salesman who was the last confirmed person to see her alive. Doctors, especially those with surgical skills, because of the precision of the cuts. Each lead ended the same way, with no proof, no arrest, no closure. Balance scale theories that shaped the case. Over time, several theories emerged. The surgeon theory. The killer was a medical professional who used surgical knowledge to dissect the body. The revenge theory. A jealous lover or rejected man murdered Elizabeth in a fit of rage. The Hollywood cover-up theory. Some believe powerful men silenced the case to protect reputations. The serial killer theory. A few investigators linked her death to other similar mutilation murders across the U.S. But despite all efforts, no evidence ever pointed to a single, provable suspect. Public reaction and fear. The brutality of the crime terrified Los Angeles. Newspapers described it as a nightmare in daylight. Women avoided walking alone. Parents warned daughters not to talk to strangers. The city's glamorous image cracked, exposing a dark underworld beneath Hollywood's golden glow. The LAPD faced enormous pressure to solve the crime, but every promising lead went cold. Even with thousands of tips, the killer had vanished into the city's shadows, leaving behind only rumors and fear. Candle the funeral. Elizabeth's body was sent home to Medford, Massachusetts. Her mother, Phoebe, was heartbroken. Her daughter's dream had ended in horror. On January 25, 1947, a small funeral was held. Elizabeth was buried in Mountain View Cemetery in Oakland, California. The coffin was simple, the ceremony quiet. Her sisters and mother mourned privately, far from the flashing lights of the Hollywood she once adored. The case goes cold. Months turned into years. Hundreds of people claimed to know the truth. Dozens even confessed, all false. The FBI's involvement produced no leads. By 1949, the case went cold. But Elizabeth Short's name lived on, in books, films, and whispers through Hollywood's back alleys. Her beauty, mystery, and tragic death made her an icon, not of fame, but of how darkness can destroy dreams. Candle transitioned to the next chapter. The Black Dahlia case became a legend, a perfect storm of brutality, media obsession, and unsolved mystery. It was no longer just about one young woman. It became a symbol of Hollywood's hidden cruelty. Next came the theories, shocking claims, secret suspects, and confessions that blurred truth and fiction. The world would never forget her, but no one would ever find her killer. Part 4. The Investigation, Suspects, and Unsolved Mystery of the Black Dahlia. After the shocking discovery of Elizabeth Short's mutilated body on January 15, 1947, the Los Angeles Police Department, LAPD, launched one of the most extensive investigations in Hollywood history. However, despite massive public attention and hundreds of leads, the case remains unsolved. The crime scene and immediate investigation. Elizabeth's body was found in Leimert Park, Los Angeles, posed in a grotesque manner, bisected at the waist and drained of blood. The crime scene was disturbingly clean, suggesting the murderer had medical knowledge or extreme precision. LAPD immediately called in multiple officers, including homicide detectives Harry Hansen and Finis Brown, to process the scene. Media frenzy began immediately. The press nicknamed her the Black Dahlia, after a popular film noir, which sensationalized the crime and intensified public scrutiny. Suspects and persons of interest. Over the years, law enforcement and researchers have considered dozens of suspects. Some notable ones include Dr. George Hodel, a Los Angeles physician with a controversial background, accused of sexual deviance and suspected in other violent crimes. His son, Steve Hodel, later claimed in his book that Dr. Hodel was the killer, citing circumstantial evidence and forensic analysis of photos. Leslie Dillon, a bellhop and writer who corresponded with police while they were investigating similar murders, considered a suspect because of his knowledge of police procedures, but ultimately cleared. Mark Hansen, owner of the nightclub where Elizabeth was last reportedly seen. Some investigators suspected him due to proximity and rumors about interactions with Short, but there was no conclusive evidence. Walter Bailey, a gynecologist suspected because of the surgical precision in the body's dismemberment. Other theories. Organized crime connections, especially regarding Hollywood figures. Random serial killer targeting young women in Los Angeles. Personal vendettas or jealous ex-lovers. Investigative challenges. The LAPD faced several challenges that hindered solving the case. Media interference. Journalists published details from the crime scene, potentially contaminating evidence. Witness reliability. Many witnesses were inconsistent or unreliable due to the intense media frenzy. Forensic limitations. In 1947, crime scene analysis and forensic techniques were primitive compared to today. DNA testing was not available, fingerprints were incomplete, and blood evidence could not be analyzed as it is today. Letters and hoaxes. Investigators received hundreds of letters, some from people claiming to be the killer. Most were hoaxes or attention-seeking letters from the public. One letter claimed intimate knowledge of the crime scene and surgical technique, but it never led to a definitive suspect. Why the case remains unsolved. The combination of lack of physical evidence, sensationalized media, and a high number of false leads made it nearly impossible to identify the killer. The case remains one of the most famous cold cases in American history, inspiring books, films, and countless theories. Modern investigators still analyze the case with new technology, including DNA and digital forensics, but no definitive conclusion has been reached. Cultural impact. The murder has become a symbol of Hollywood's dark side. Countless movies, documentaries, and books depict the story, blending fact with speculation. Elizabeth Short, though tragically murdered, became an enduring icon of mystery and intrigue. Part 5. Modern Investigations and Lingering Mysteries. Even more than 75 years after Elizabeth Short's brutal murder, the case continues to fascinate both law enforcement and the public. Part 5 explores modern investigations, technological advances, and how the case shaped Hollywood culture. Re-examination of evidence. LAPD and independent investigators have revisited the original crime scene photos, police reports, and evidence multiple times. Forensic advancements like DNA profiling and digital imaging have been applied to old evidence, but the results remain inconclusive. Some of Elizabeth's personal effects, including letters and diaries, were analyzed to trace her last movements, but they yielded no concrete leads. Dr. George Hodel and the Hodel theory. In the 1990s, Steve Hodel, a retired LAPD detective and son of Dr. George Hodel, published books claiming his father was the Black Dahlia killer. Evidence cited includes photographs of women with posing similar to Elizabeth Short's body, connections to other unsolved murders, Dr. Hodel's medical knowledge and access to surgical instruments. Despite compelling circumstantial evidence, official authorities have not confirmed this theory. Other modern suspects. Robert "Red" Manley, known for driving Short around the day she disappeared, officially cleared but often mentioned in retrospectives. Walter Bailey and other medical professionals, re-examined for possible involvement due to the surgical nature of the mutilation. Multiple serial killer theories. Some investigators suggest the crime may have been part of a larger pattern of post-war serial killings in Los Angeles. Media, movies, and books. The case has inspired countless films, documentaries, and novels, including The Black Dahlia, film by Brian De Palma, 2006. Books by Steve Hodel and other crime historians. Hollywood's fascination with the murder has contributed to mythologizing Elizabeth Short, blending fact and fiction in pop culture. The nickname Black Dahlia itself reflects the media's sensationalism and Hollywood's noir obsession. Why it still captures attention. The mystery, the gruesome and unsolved nature of the murder keeps it in the public imagination. The victim, Elizabeth Short's life, struggles, and tragic death humanize the case and make her story compelling. Hollywood's dark side. The case symbolizes the underbelly of 1940s Los Angeles, where glamour and violence coexisted. Lingering questions. Who killed Elizabeth Short and why? Was it a single individual or part of a larger pattern of crimes? Could modern forensic technology finally solve the case if evidence still exists? The legacy of the Black Dahlia. Elizabeth Short has become a symbol of Hollywood tragedy. Her story reminds investigators, historians, and the public of the dangers women faced, particularly in post-war Los Angeles. The case remains a touchstone in true crime history, illustrating the challenges of solving murder in a media-saturated environment. Conclusion: the Black Dahlia case remains an enduring mystery. Despite decades of investigation, high-profile suspects, and modern forensic techniques, the killer's identity has never been confirmed. Elizabeth Short's life and death continue to captivate the world, cementing her place in both true crime history and Hollywood legend.